All right, welcome everybody. New York Got Game Live. Sky Dexter Henry here. We are going to be talking about the Knicks. They've decided finally hired a head coach. It was Mike Brown, and we're going to talk about this on this show. Joining me shortly will be Bryan Fonseca. We just had to relocate him to another location before he comes on with me. Sorry for the delay. We had some technical difficulties, but we're here now. And joining me on this show to talk a little bit about the hiring for Mike Brown is Stephen Bondi, the great beat reporter for the New York Post, who joins me now. Steph, what's going on, man?
What's up, man? How you doing?
Steph, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I cannot hear Steph, guys, at all whatsoever. I can't hear Steph. Steph, hang tight with us for
Yep.
1 second. We'll bring you back on. I'm not able to hear Steph. I can see him, but I cannot hear him. Actually, Steph, try one more time. Bring Steph back on.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you now, Steph.
Okay.
That was on my end. My earpiece was coming. Steph, how you doing, man? I know it's been a
Good,
busy
man.
day
How
for
you
you.
doing?
I'm good. Busy day. I knew this news was going to drop when I was at Citi Field, but it dropped, and I know you've been in full scramble mode. But what's your reaction to this? So you've been following this coaching search. What do you make of this Knicks hiring of Mike Brown? Because there's a lot of questions around this. What do you make of this hiring?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was kind of in the works for a while, for like a couple of days at least. Their focus had shifted to him, kind of as soon as you knew that he was coming back for that second interview, that he was going to be the hire. And listen, it's almost he's the safe choice in that he's
Hmm.
experienced. He's seen it all. He's coached some of the greatest players of all time, whether it's LeBron James, Kevin Durant when he was an associate head coach with the Golden State Warriors, Kyrie Irving when he was an assistant in San Antonio. He was with Tim Duncan, Kobe Bryant with the Lakers. So, in terms of basketball situations, the guy's seen it all. And he's stepping into a pressure packed circumstance with the New York Knicks. This is now win time for them. This is their win now window. And there's going to be a lot of pressure on him. And if he doesn't come through, the heat is going to shift to the front office, which fired Tom Thibodeau and went with a coach who, listen, I think if you told me during the conference finals that they would be firing Tom Thibodeau and replacing him with Mike Brown, I'd say bull crap.
Hmm.
But it happened, and now we're in a situation where there's a lot of heat on the front office to make this work, to get to the conference finals at the very least, and probably get to the finals. And it's going to be on Mike Brown to do it as the coach.
So, Steph, I've seen some of the reaction from Knicks fans. I've talked to some other people. Some people will look at this, and you called it a safe hire. Some people will say it's a meh hire. Is he? But I think we talked about this, and what the Knicks are looking for is they wanted to see if somebody can maximize this roster. Is Mike Brown, based on his acumen that you just spoke of and everything that he's done in his career, two-time Coach of the Year winner, is he a guy that you think can maximize this roster?
Um, I mean, maximize it like can he be better? Can he make them better than Thibodeau? I don't think so. Well, I've been on this show before, and I've told you every player basically had a career year under Tibbs.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think they got lucky because they were healthy, and a lot of things fell for them. I think they actually overachieved. So to me, they maximized who they were last season. The Indiana Pacers came one game away from winning the NBA championship. The Knicks were one collapse away, I think, from getting to a game 7 at home against that team, the Indiana Pacers. So if you look at the Knicks roster and what they did last season, I thought they were maximized. So it's hard for me to say, well, a new guy's going to come in and make them better because I thought they were about as good as they can be.
That is his task, though, right? It is to make him better, right? Even with that, even that would being said, and I think would you look? I guess I should ask you this: would you look at this season that's upcoming now with all the pressure that's going to be on Mike Brown? Is this finals or bust? Is this championship or bust? What's how real is that pressure for Mike
Yeah,
Brown?
finals or bust. When you make a move like that and you see the circumstances that happen with Boston, where Jason Tatum, he's going to be out for most of the year, if not all the year. Same with Tyrese Halliburton. and you look at the landscape of the Eastern Conference and you say the Knicks should come out of there. I think the Cleveland Cavaliers, pose a real threat. But then if you go down the list, I think that you could say the Knicks are the number one team in the East right now. And when you fire a coach who had them within 2 games of getting to the NBA Finals, and then all the injuries that happen, you come into the season with an expectation that you'll make the NBA Finals. Now, listen, Tom Thibodeau wasn't fired for his results.
Right.
I've said this before. He was fired because he was difficult. He was difficult to work with. He didn't want to collaborate with the front office. When he was being told have a 10-man rotation and develop, focus, have a plan for the younger players. He just thought, and there were problems within the roster and players grumbling about different things. His mindset and philosophy was just win and it'll go away. It did not go away because people want to feel appreciated. They want credit for things. They want to feel heard. But to me, I mean, winning is the bottom line. Tom Thibodeau did a lot of that. So, do you bring in a coach who collaborates with the front office, who has a 10-man rotation? Does that mean they're going to win a championship? I don't know.
That's kind of what I was going to get at with you, Steph. Like, does that stuff actually matter, right? Like, does the people stuff matter in terms of managing people, being a coach? I guess we're arguing, like, how much value is there in that? I think there is some value in it, but how much is it?
I mean, sure, maybe like you want. I mean, we all have jobs. We've all had bosses that we hate or didn't like. We all have managers that we didn't like working for, and it affects your performance sometimes. It's hard to say. I mean, sometimes that manager that's busting your chops and making you work harder when you don't want to work, that produces the better results. So it's hard for me to say how that's going to work out. It could go very well. It could go terribly wrong. And either way, there's a lot of pressure on the Knicks front office and Mike Brown to make this work.
Yeah, and I said we're gonna bring in Bryan Fonseca, who's with us. We had to move to another location, but Bryan is here with us to join us here on the show. Welcome, Bryan. Steph, one of the other questions I wanted to ask you before I kick it over to Bryan is that you're gonna get people who are just gonna say, look at this and say, okay, the next coach you hire after you fire somebody, you hope that he is the better coach, right? And that doesn't always work like that. Sometimes it's the coach that is the better fit. Do you think Mike Brown is a better coach than Tom Thibodeau, or does that not matter? Does he have to be the better coach, or does he have to be the better coach that fits this roster?
I don't think he's a better coach than Tom Thibodeau. Maybe he's a better coach that fits this roster. I can't really tell you that answer right now. I mean, if you look at now, I know everybody looks at, hey, the guy's been fired 4 times, but if you look at why he got fired, I think you'll give him a pass. I mean, in each different situation. First time in Cleveland, the owner, Dan Gilbert, was like, we got to keep LeBron James, so we got to make a change to the coach. That didn't work. LeBron James still left for the Miami Heat. Second time he was fired with the Lakers, he had replaced Phil Jackson. And there was like this thing where it's like the Lakers are the cream of the crop. We have Kobe Bryant. We got to win a title every year. That was unrealistic. It was also unrealistic to expect him to be Phil Jackson. He was fired. Second time he went to Cleveland, he butted heads with Kyrie Irving. In retrospect, not his fault. I don't really know. I haven't got a good handle on what happened in Sacramento. But if you look at what he did in Sacramento his first season, they were the number one rated offense in the NBA. They got to the playoffs for the first time in a very long time, and it kind of went down after that. But just looking at the results, he shouldn't have been fired.
Yeah, that was shocking me. Bryan, go ahead.
Yeah, what's up, guys? Just wanted to ask Steph about the process a little bit. Does it surprise you that this is where the Knicks landed? I guess is where I'll start because going into it, I wasn't sure Mike Brown was going to be where we landed here. I'm a little surprised at that, though I think he's a really good coach, but I feel like they might have had other things in mind when they let Tom Thibodeau go to begin with. But tell me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this. On the first day, on the day Tibbs was fired, I heard a bunch of names thrown out there. I heard a bunch of names dismissed immediately. And I reported one of them. I said, Mike Malone is not a candidate. Do not think that he's going to get the job, because everybody just immediately jumped to him. But one name I did hear as a possibility on the very first day was Mike Brown. And I heard that along with the names of Ime Udoka and Jason Kidd. So, you know, I think they did like real for real. Like they did think of Mike Brown as one of the options immediately. So, yeah, if you look at his name, and I like when I wrote about it originally, early June, people were like, Mike Brown, what are you kidding me? And I understand that. I mean, it's a retread hire. And it's a retread hire of a guy who's been fired 4 times. So I understand why people aren't enthusiastic about this coaching hire. But I will say that he was somebody on their radar from the very beginning. And the idea that he's a fallback option is somewhat true, only in that they preferred these coaches that were under contract that they could not get. And then once they went through the interview process and started interviewing available head coaches or former head coaches, then they quickly decided that Mike Brown got the edge over Taylor Jenkins. And that's kind of where the wind was blowing after that.
And to piggyback off that, who really led the charge in this hire? Was it a Leon Rose-led decision? Did anybody else have like a large voice in this process?
I couldn't tell you who is the single guy. I mean, I know Worldwide West has a previous relationship with Mike Brown. So he's somebody who I thought of immediately, but I could not tell you definitively which person made this hire.
Yeah, it is. When it comes to talking about the retreads, Steph, it is interesting in how some people and fans, maybe other people around the league, may not be excited by this. But I guess my question to that is, was there a candidate out there that you thought could have excited if the Knicks had went that direction? Would have been somebody like James Borrego, who I know is still rumored to possibly be part of the staff as a lead assistant. Was there an exciting hire out there?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. If you fire Tibbs, the assumption was, well, they got Jay Wright in the bag. Jay Wright's going to come. Or people were excited about Mike Malone because he was coming. He actually won a championship. So Danny Hurley was like, those are kind of names that excite people. Whether or not they become good coaches,
yeah, no, that's the thing.
That's a different thing. So yeah, I mean, there were names out there immediately that people, if they'd win the press conference. Mike Brown is a good, solid coach, a compelling personality. He's going to be great in his press conference, but you don't win the press conference with hiring Mike Brown. Now, it doesn't matter if you get to the playoffs and you get to the finals and succeed, but I don't think you're exciting the fan base by hiring Mike Brown.
Nah, you're not. And you're right, Steph. Some people might be excited by Jay Wright, but he might be excited by some other college coach they thought was coming. I don't think that necessarily was the right move, but
I mean, fans would have been fans. I think fans also would have been excited by Johnny Bryant because there was a lot of.
They would have. I agree.
Yeah, there was a lot. There was a lot of thought that he's kind of the unknown, and when you hire the unknown, there seems to be a lot of potential there, and there's a feeling with Mike Brown that we know who he is. And he has not had great success in the playoffs.
You kind of set me up on where I wanted to go next with you, because do we know who Mike Brown is? Right, because he came out when he first came coaching at his Cavs coach the first time. He's kind of known as a defensive guy. Then after he was under Kerr and what we saw him do with the Kings, more of an offensive guy. So are we getting Mike Brown the defensive head coach, or are we getting the offensive head coach? Who is Mike Brown, or is it a combination of both that he's learn from all these stops?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I think if you want to sell me on Mike Brown, you sell me on how he kind of adapted to the modern NBA and how he learned through the Warriors, through coaching with Steve Kerr, how to kind of design an offense to create the best, literally the number 1 rated offense in the NBA with talents that you couldn't say are exactly like superstars. De'Aaron Fox isn't a superstar. Domantas Sabonis isn't a superstar. But with those type of players, he created the number one offense in the NBA. So I think if you're looking at that aspect of him and his last stop with the Sacramento Kings, I think that's really where you sell me on the idea that this guy can come in and develop something that wasn't there last season. Because let's face it, the Knicks offense wasn't that creative. And part of that is just Jalen Brunson is a ball dominant point guard and he's going to have the rock a lot. But if you figure out a way to incorporate some of the other weapons that the Knicks have, and I'm talking about Karl Anthony Towns, obviously, I'm talking about Mikal Bridges, then you're raising the ceiling here. I think a lot of the gripes that the players had was like when Jalen went out and OG Anunoby had a bigger role and Mikal Bridges had a bigger role, they kind of saw, all right, well, we told you we can do these kind of things. Give us the ball more. And then Tibbs never figured out, like, how do I incorporate all these guys at once? And I don't know if that's because of who Jalen Brunson is as a player or the schemes that were being drawn up offensively. But, I think the idea is that you have a 10-man rotation where these guys aren't getting a ton of minutes. You have a lot more ball movement. A lot of guys feel like they're more involved, and you get the best out of, as you said before, maximize everybody on this roster. It sounds good in theory. I don't know. Like me personally, like OG Anunoby shouldn't have the rock that much. Like he can't really create for himself. He thinks he's a great offensive player and should create for himself. But if you see him with the rock, he's not. That's not who he is. Like he should be in the corner and he should be cutting to the rim and getting the backdoor passes and scoring that way.
I agree.
So, if you suddenly give him the ball and say, all right, we're going to have more of a community offense, I don't necessarily think that's going to make the team better. But we'll see. I mean, if that's really how it goes, then we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, that's what makes all this so interesting in terms of how Mike Brown, what his impact can be on this team. The sense I get from you, Steph, and I know Bryan is a little bit on this too, because we talked before we started, you're kind of meh on this hire. You're just like, it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I think he could be a good coach. I don't know. But if you had told me during the conference finals when the Knicks were in Game 6 that they're going to fire Tom Thibodeau and replace him with Mike Brown, what would you have said?
I would have. That's a great question for me. I would have said, Steph, what went wrong? Because I can't not be honest here and say that the day they fired Tom Thibodeau, I don't know if I was completely shocked. I think when I look back at it, I was shocked a little bit at the timing, which kind of leads me to something I know Bryan wants to talk about as well too, is what do you make of the process from the day they fired Tom Thibodeau to getting to this decision? Did you think the Knicks were, it seems like they were thorough because of the time they took, but were they as thorough? Like, what do you make of the process that the Knicks had to get to Mike Brown?
Well, their process was such that they knew they wanted to fire Tom Thibodeau, and they did that, and then they didn't have a backup plan. So, it's not that they didn't have a backup plan. They didn't have a succession plan. And then they kind of did it on the fly after that. We didn't know if these guys are, we didn't know if Billy Donovan is going to be available. We don't know if Jason Kidd's going to be available or Ime Udoka, but let's try. And then, let's cast a wide as net as possible. So let's reach out to Dawn Staley and talk to her just to see what's going on. And
I sense a little bit of shade there, Steph. I sense a little bit of shade.
Well, no, I'm not ever trying to shade Dawn Staley, but
no. I knew. Just to be clear, Steph is not shading Dawn Staley. That's not where the shade was directed. Just in terms of the process is what I was.
Yeah, saying. I don't really understand. Like, obviously, like due diligence is one thing, but I don't. I think when you fire somebody like Tom Thibodeau and you reach the conference finals, then you have a plan in place, and there was not a plan in place.
Yep. That's something that we were talking about before. It felt like, Because I thought, and we talked about this as this was going on, I felt like you fired Tom Thibodeau after the season you just had, which for the Knicks was technically historic. You fire him with a plan. And it didn't seem that way, Bondi. Like you just outlined it. It didn't seem like they actually fired, like, not that it was completely emotional, but it was under like, all right, we'll canvas everything possible and maybe somebody breaks through, but it didn't end up happening that way. It almost felt, I don't know if disorganized is the right term, but it felt kind of a little bit all over the place until we finally got here. So maybe they found the right guy. Like this can be true too. Like Mike Brown could be the right adaptable guy for the situation. He did coach a number one offense a few years ago on one of the worst franchises in sports in Sacramento. Their defense was terrible, but their offense was great. However, the process in getting here was a little bit weird. I don't know if it's going to matter though if they ultimately just win a bunch of games, but we'll see.
Yeah, and when you look at what happened when they hired Leon Rose and Worldwide West, the thing was like these guys know everybody. Like they're gonna work back channels and figure out everything. They're gonna be 10 steps ahead of everybody. But when with that in mind, you're like, well, then they know they've talked to people, they know exactly who they're gonna hire if they fire Tom Thibodeau. And I get it. Like, I guess there's a real risk, and if you know you're gonna fire somebody, that and then you go talk to people about hiring them, then there's a real risk of it getting leaked, and then it becomes a real problem for Tom if he's still coaching and the players. But yeah, it seems like the process was off.
So I've talked to Bryan about this, right? I've wondered about the process because we haven't really seen much of this. Steph, you've covered the NBA for a long time. We haven't seen many teams fire their coach after reaching a conference finals or being 2 wins away from the NBA finals. So on one end, I'm kind of like, what is the process for that after, right? And unless you had already thought of. We've also saw Denver fire their coach with 4 games left in the season. We saw Memphis fire their coach with 10 games left in the season. So there's been some weird firings in the NBA where I'm not sure like how the process goes after that. The point you made that I just thought was a really good one that I hadn't considered, Steph, is when you look at Leon Rose and Worldwide West and everything, and Bryan and I were talking about this a little bit, I think what you can criticize as shaking the process is I don't have a problem with the fact they went after guys under contract. It's whatever. You can go for top guys. This happens in businesses all the time. People go to try to hire people that are with other companies. But you should have the connections, or at least that's what we were sold, right? That you got the back channels to keep this under wraps. Does it bother you? Because I know it bothered Bryan a little bit, and I was talking about this. Does it bother you that that stuff kind of got out? It's not that they went after the people, but it kind of got out.
That part's not their fault because it got out because, all right, well, it's sort of their fault. I mean, it got out because other teams got it. You have to ask permission of the other team. So the Knicks didn't leak that. The other team leaked it.
That's why I said,
yeah, they're very willing to make fun of the Knicks for a bunch of reasons, including the owner, James Dolan, has been fighting the NBA and all the other owners in every other issue. So it's like, all right, well, if you're going to ask permission for our guy, we're going to leak it to the media. And then soon it becomes a story where we're making fun of you because you're asking for everybody. That's not Leon's or Wes's fault. I mean, I'm sure they knew as soon as they asked for permission that all this stuff was going to come out because they have to talk to the other side.
Right.
Literally was what I said almost word for word before we started this. Look, and ultimately, Dex, to your point that you made before, because y'all should know the pre-show was great. But ultimately, it might not matter because again, as long as they continue to win, if they get to the finals, like none of that will matter. But if they don't, people will work backwards and then look at, all right, how did we get here? And then start to question some things. And I do wonder what happens there, but it might not matter. And I do think just bringing it back to Mike Brown specifically, like maybe he's going to be more adaptable. Maybe he's going to play the young guys. We don't know. And I think, Steph, you raised an interesting point where like, do we really like know what he's going to bring? And I want to ask you, like, how do you think he's going to handle this situation? Because it felt like to me, if you're going to replace Tibbs, I don't think you could have done it with Johnny Bryan. I think you would have need somebody with experience. Now he doesn't have a title. He's been to the finals, got swept in the finals with a bad team, so it wasn't his fault. But like, do you think he's the right guy in terms of having prior experience, coaching good teams in the past, and things of that nature?
Yeah, I think that it was important for a lot of people in the organization that the next coach comes in with experience. And I do think that's important. I think in any job you're talking about is important. And my job is important. If I started this coaching search and it was my first coaching search covering it, I would have done a shitty job. So like I've learned over my 10 coaching searches how this really goes, who to trust, what not to believe, what to believe. And that goes for any profession. And I think a coach who's seen that, been there, done that, whether it's an assistant with the Warriors or an assistant with the San Antonio Spurs, or as a head coach with the Cavaliers when he was in the 2007 finals, and more recently he had Sacramento in the playoffs. I think experience matters, and I think it was important. And he had more experience. He literally had more experience than any of these candidates that were available. So I mean, Mike Malone was available, and if you go down the line and go to like Jeff Van Gundy, but Jeff Van Gundy, first of all, I don't think he would take the job. Second of all, he's very far removed from coaching in the NBA. I think he's a great coach. I think he's shown how smart he is, even when he's been an assistant with the Boston Celtics. He won a title. I thought he did a great job with the Los Angeles Clippers with building their defense up. But I don't think there was mutual interest at all there. So if you take some of those guys out of the equation, Mike Brown comes in. He has the most experience out of anybody.
Yes, Key. Do you think he plays the young guy, Steph? That's a question a lot of fans want to know. Do you think he?
I think it's a mandate. I think it's going to be mandated that he does.
Is that good for the organization? I guess a mandate. There's two ways you can look at it. It could be good, could not be good. Do you think it's good?
All right. I'll retract that. I don't know about mandate. There's going to be a suggestion that he does, and
a strong suggestion. Gotcha.
Strong suggestion.
Gotcha. And, strongly suggested.
And if you look down the roster and everybody's healthy, having a 10-man rotation is not that crazy. You want to go through it? Who's going to be on the bench? Let's say Josh Hart starts, although it could be Mitchell Robinson. You got Mitchell Robinson, Miles McBride,
Clarkson, Yabusele.
Yeah, the two guys they just signed. So we're already at 9.
And one of the rookies, basically, or one of the last year's rookies.
Probably Gadier.
One of the rookies you're giving 12 minutes to. That's a 10-man rotation. Problem is, they're not going to be healthy. So, there are going to be times where the Knicks are going to be like, we got to play this guy. Do I really have to play this 10-man rotation when I got to play this guy that can't really play? We'll see how that goes. And I think there's, like I said before, there's an emphasis on player development. There's an emphasis on expanding the rotation. That all sounds great in theory. I think, teams have done it. They've shown the ability to do it. Mike Brown did that he played a lot more players in Sacramento at his last stop. So we'll see if it works. But I think that's the plan going into next season.
Okay. You can see that. What about you? Because you mentioned something about the starting lineup that kind of caught me there. Any chance you think Deuce makes it into the starting lineup next season under Mike Brown? Because a lot of data showed that he was good in that starting lineup instead of Hart. Do you think Deuce is a possibility to go there next season?
So they go. Sorry, who's the power forward then?
I guess
it has to be OG.
OG yeah. Played the 4. Yeah, I guess.
I mean, that's a really small lineup. I don't think they'll do that, honestly. But maybe. I haven't talked to Mike Brown yet.
Right. We also don't know. We don't know when the press conference is yet, so we have no idea of that yet, or if we will be able to talk to Mike Brown because we don't get to talk to anybody in the front office of the Knicks. So that'll be interesting. I guess the last couple things for me here, Steph. We talked to you the other day after we knew about Clarkson, Yabusele now signed. I had mentioned I liked his skill set and what he could bring for the Knicks in terms of stretching the floor. Do you like what the Knicks did to upgrade their bench here with Clarkson, even though we know Clarkson can get up a lot of shots? Do you like what they did with Clarkson and Yabusele to add a little more scoring punch to this bench?
Yeah, I think they did a good job. Actually, I've found out that Rich Paul, he called the Knicks first, and he said, if this guy can come loose, is he somebody you're interested in? If we can get him out of Utah, would you guys want him? So, Clutch and CAA Knicks are doing business together. So that's a good sign. And so, obviously Jordan Clarkson wanted to be in New York, and he's the kind of guy you want off the bench. You want a scoring kind of microwave scorer who can just put it up in bunches. And I get Campaign was kind of like that, but Jordan Clarkson is better than Campaign. He's Campaign on steroids, and he's able to create his own shots in a lot of ways. And I think he was a really good signing. Yabusele, I think he's the kind of guy you want off the bench as well. And he's developed a 3-point shot that kind of makes him a floor spacer, and he's strong and he plays physical. I was really impressed with him. I mean, he was on my radar during those Olympics where he just remember that dunk on LeBron.
Yeah, that was crazy. I remember that.
He's an exciting player. He's the kind of energy player you want off the bench. I think they did a really good job, and they fortified their bench. And listen, would I have wanted Al Horford? Yeah, probably. I don't know where Horford's going to go. Would I have touched Russell Westbrook? Hell no. I don't think the Knicks ever thought that they wanted Russell Westbrook. So I thought they did a good job.
Yeah, I think the Knicks did a good job. I guess one last thing for me. We all here on this panel agree that this is finals or bust for the Knicks. I'm with you guys on this 110%.
But what's bust? Then everybody gets fired?
Well, you know what?
Well, here's the thing.
Go ahead. Talk about that.
They said it on their press release when they fired Tibbs, where they're like, we think we have a championship roster or some variation of that. So like it's really, they put it out there that this is essentially a championship or bust. See, I don't know what bust means.
But Bondi makes to me a good question. What is bust though? Right? So if they don't do this and this doesn't happen, and you're right, Bryan, that they put this out there, the question that Bondi's raising here is more than fair. Okay, so who's then the fall person? Who's then accountable for it? It has to be the people that made the change to go from Tibbs to Brown. Now, I'm not saying that they shouldn't have done that. That's not my point. My point is the question that Bondi raises is, but what's bust? And when it's bust, which bust means they don't make the finals, but what happens when they bust? That's the question, right? Bondi, how do you see that going? Because the front office never fires themselves. That never happens.
Well, the owner can fire the front office. It's all about survival. How good are Leon Rose and William Wesley at playing the political game? Can they, if they don't get to the point that they expect them to, how do they survive? We'll see. I mean, maybe they won't need that, but it's all about the blame game, man, and who's taking the fall and who gets in the owner's ear and convinces him that they're not the problem. Because the other option is trade everybody.
I also think, though, to add to that,
fans are gonna love that.
But I also think to add to that, the process will matter. Like, if you don't make it to the finals at all, and in fact, if you lose in the second round of the playoffs to like the Atlanta Hawks, who actually look sneaky interesting, then that's one where it's like anything could be on the table. If you lose in the finals and push OKC to 6 or 7 games, like maybe, so I also think the process matters. Potential injuries will dictate the season, unfortunately, for every team. So a big part of this is
you haven't learned that, man. You got to learn, man. It's not about results. Like we talked about before this.
I agree.
Like if Tibbs gets past the Celtics, he's fine.
Yep. A lot of people were saying that stuff. A lot of people were saying that. Yep.
It's about relationships, man. It's always, if they don't get you on results, they get you on relationships.
That is true in any job. Any job.
That's a fact.
Gosh, Steph is out here preaching the gospel. That is true in any job. But Steph, I was going to ask you, the last thing I have for you before I let you go. If we all say it's finals or bust, but you know how this thing goes. We've all covered sports for a long time, and you know how the fans are going to be. 3-game losing streak in December. It's going to be get Mike Brown up out of here. Mm-hmm. You know how that's and the seats. The people going. I might be doing the show with you. I'm like, Steph, is Mike Brown in the hot seat? And the question will kind of be ridiculous. It will be, but you know that's going to happen. Do you think Mike Brown's equipped to handle that? Because it's going to come. It's going to happen. Do you think he's a coach that's equipped to handle that in New York?
So I wish I could give you an answer because I wish I could give you an answer where I know Mike Brown personally and can tell you yes or no. I don't know. But I mean, if you look at his history, the guy has been through the biggest pressurized experiences in the NBA. When you have LeBron James in his prime, or he was a little bit younger than his prime when Mike Brown had him, there's nothing bigger. There's no more bigger pressure than that. And you have to succeed, or else this guy might leave. They ended up losing, but he's been through that situation. When you take over for Phil Jackson with the Lakers and you're coaching Kobe Bryant, there's no more bigger pressurized situation than that. When you're in Golden State and you have Steph Curry and Kevin Durant, and the goal is if you don't win a championship, you suck and you're a failure. There's no bigger pressure than that. So just based on his experience, I think he can handle
that. Fair answer.
One more real quick, Steph, on the way out. This is going to sound ridiculous, but given the chat, like there's differing opinions on this, and we're all talking about this being potentially finals or bust. Is this a unique situation where he's entering the season already on the hot seat?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. You have to. Yeah, I mean, like you said, if you suddenly start out 4-10, people are going to start calling for, you're the fucking problem, because we were just in the conference finals. We were just in game 6 of the conference finals, and now we're 4-10. What the hell's the matter with the coach?
Right.
I mean, if you look at what they changed, let's say there's no trades. There could always be a trade, but let's say there's no trades. If you look at what happened with this roster, the entire starting lineup is the same. They actually added depth to the bench, so you should be a better team. If you're a worse team, you look at what they changed and what did they change the coach. So yes, I wouldn't say he's on the hot seat at 0-0, but he'll be on the hot seat of. All right, hot seat is too strong. He'll be getting a lot of criticism, and the heat will be coming down on him if they start off, 4-10 or whatever.
Yeah, 4-10. Woo, that's not gonna be fun.
I think. Look, if they're 500 on Christmas, I think people will be nervous.
That's not gonna be fun either. That's not gonna be fun either. I'm gonna have to hit up Bondi. We're doing videos. We're doing stuff for New York Got Game, and Bondi's like, ugh, gotta talk about.
I don't want to do another coaching search.
Bondi, I'm glad we don't have to talk about coaching for the rest of the summer. I'm actually happy about this. Probably the last time we talk about it, but I'm sure at some point at the start of next season or whenever, if they start 4-10, clip this to everybody, my producers, clip this. Not that Bondi is predicting it, but just come back to it, and we'll let you know about how hot the seat is.
If they start 30-10, then there's a discussion the other way, right?
I mean, you're in good shape until you get to the second round, right? Because the conference finals, because it's finals or bust, guys. Finals or bust.
Anyone who could turn the Sacramento Kings into that has my respect. It should have all our respect.
It should be noted they were a joke of a franchise before Mike Brown got there, and he did a really good job in Sacramento. And I wish I could tell you I knew why he was fired, but I don't. And I'd like to track that story down, to be honest.
All right. We know you're going to be on top of it. Stephen Bondi, one of the best, gave us a lot of time here to talk about the hiring of Mike Brown. Steph, appreciate you as always. Get some rest, I guess I will say, because it doesn't look like the Knicks are going to do too many more moves. But you never know in this world of sports. Another move might be coming that we didn't even see. Thank you, Steph.
All right, man.
No problem. That's Stephen Bondi, everybody. Great beat writer for the New York Post. That was a fun conversation. We're gonna bring in. We're gonna get a fan perspective on this. We have our guy. He sat with us. I think it was for our first live stream that we did during the postseason against Detroit. You guys know him as Knicks Metal Recap. He does all the recap songs. It's our guy Doug Burns. Join us now. Dougie, what's going on, man?
How are you, fellas? That was awesome, by the way, sitting in the waiting room and listening to Bondi cook, bro. I could listen to him talk hoops all day. He knows his stuff.
Doug, you just have a drink? Like, what happened? You look like you're really, really relaxed over there.
I'm chilling, man. It's Mike Brown Day, baby. I'm celebrating Mike Brown.
Doug is on one right now. In a good way.
nice to see you guys, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Nah, man. Had to have you on to talk about it. I guess the first thing out the gate is you turned Bondi talk. How do you feel about this move? You like this move?
I like it. I really do like it for a number of reasons. I think Mike Brown got an extremely raw deal in Sacramento in that the 2022-23 season, I felt like it was a very cohesive group. He ran a lot of his offense through Sabonis in the high post and often create a lot of good looks in the half court doing that. And then he had De'Aaron Fox to up the pace. And they had a really good ecosystem and a really good vibe that season. And I think they even outplayed the quality of their talent. And then pieces just started moving and getting stripped out from under him. And the identity of the Kings team that he had success with the DeRozan move, with the De'Aaron Fox move, things just started eroding around him in that situation. And I think he could have gotten a lot more out of a group with a little bit more consistency. So I think that he got a raw deal, and I think that he has the creative offensive mind that the Knicks need in order to get OG better shots, in order to get Mikal better shots, in order to run a more versatile offense where Karl Anthony Towns can pass out of the high post, can use his gravity a little bit more to create motion offense for the Knicks. It's my optimistic fan vision of this whole thing. And I think Tibbs had to go. I feel very strongly about that. And of all the options that were on the table, Mike Brown is one of the better ones. He's one of the more trusted and reliable ones. I was a Johnny Bryant booster, a curious Johnny Bryant. I wanted to see what he could do for us. But I also understand that the Knicks are in a position where they need to go for a sure thing with the roster that they have in place, with the timeline that all the contracts are on. It's go time now. So we need instant improvement in the offense. And we got these pieces off the bench, Yabusele and Clarkson, a very low combined annual value for these guys to shore up the first concern roster-wise. I think Mike Brown is set up for success.
All right. Do you think it's finals or bust, Doug? Are you on that track? Is this finals or bust time for you?
When you say finals or bust, do you mean make the finals or win the finals?
Make the finals. At least at a minimum, make the finals.
I think
Bryan, Bryan, are you on that? Is that finals or bust for you? Are you on the same page?
Well, I would say they're the betting favorites now to make the finals out of the Eastern Conference. Now, I need to look at the press release and see if they said championship as in championship, not just finals. But for them, I think they'll probably
level roster. I believe that was the exact word.
Yeah, I think the organization can and probably should look at it as championship or bust. But I think we could all agree that finals or bust should be the bar. But Doug, like, what do you think about that?
Yeah. I mean, I think once you reach Oklahoma City, once again, if I'm assuming they have a really good chance of coming out of the West again. I still think they're the best team in the West. So the Knicks have now moved into the position where they might clearly be on paper one of the, I would say confidently that they're the betting favorites. Makes a lot of sense to me. So I think finals or bust, unfortunately, you just have to see how it looks. You have to see how the offense looks. You have to see if Towns and Bridges seem a little bit more comfortable with the way that Mike Brown is running the system for them. And we have to see what kind of assistance the Knicks bring in terms of how they're going to address their defense, how everything is just going to shake out. Rotations will be completely different. Everything will look completely different. I want to be patient. I don't want to put too much pressure on Mike Brown to immediately come out the gate, like you said, going 30-10. I don't know if that's realistic or not, but I do believe that getting to the finals this year has to be the step forward. It has to be the step forward to feel like roster changes aren't needed, to feel like this core is correct. This core fits well, and all it took was some maneuvering of pieces and some improvements around the margin to get to where they can be a finals contender and a shoe-in to at least make it to the dance.
I feel like I'm going to remember Bryan's 30-10 record the entire offseason and into the start of the season. Like, I'm going to bring this up to Bryan when we do our live show.
It's not a prediction.
No, Bryan's not predicting, but I like the number. Here's why I like the number, right? Because, Doug, you know this. All of us know this. We've been in New York around this team and the fan base. And if they start off, remember the other number, 4-10 too, right? Through the first 14 games. If they go 4-10, like Bryan asked Steph, you heard this, Bryan asked Steph about, is the seat going to be hot? And I do think Steph answered it right in saying, maybe it's not going to be on the hot seat, but that doesn't mean somebody's not lighting a fire underneath it. Okay, somebody might be doing this. Doug, you said you'll be patient. This is New York, and these are Knicks fans.
I said that on the record, didn't I?
No, I'm saying I believe you, Doug. I just don't believe the rest of the people, is what I'm saying. Are they going to be patient? Are the Knicks fans going to be patient with the process of Mike Brown coming in here? Or is it going to be like, hey, show me what you got. You better be coaching. We better be 30-0, through the first 30 games or else.
Well, I think it's a great question. I think what's tough about this position for Mike Brown is that historically he's not gone further than Thibodeau has gone. He's not. Well, actually, that's not true. He's taken multiple teams to the finals, but he's still not won a championship. He's still the white whale eludes him just the way it does Thibodeau. So people will be quick to say, why is this an improvement? How is this an improvement? If the team is performing at the same level or worse through a certain point in the season, people are going to be able to hold that against the front office and say, oh, you bailed on the guy that got you to the conference finals for this. So I think the patience will be short. But I just ask for my fellow fans to let Mike Brown tinker, let him make the decisions with this offense in particular that can get the most out of these guys. We will start the season with Mitchell Robinson. We will start the season with a viable, clearly defined role of sixth man for Jordan Clarkson. We will start the season with a viable, quality backup big in Gershon Yabusele. These are all things that are in place to help the Knicks succeed and be better. So maybe it takes time to mesh. I don't know. He's also an expert, in my opinion, at dealing with stars. So we have a group here that's from a personality standpoint, they're known as humble, chill, relaxed, not guys who go out, not big personalities in the media, just more of a chill group. I mean, look at the five guys that are on the screen right now. Very low-key dudes. So I think that Brown has dealt with more volatile personalities and had good results with those personalities. Again, everything to me adds up to this is a solid hire. This is a solid hire. We need to be patient. We need to see how things play out and see if he can implement some of those spacing and high post initiated offense. I guess it was called the Princeton offense. I'm not like a huge X's and O's guy, but I do remember a lot of success coming out of that Sabonis high post, and that just the images of those sets stick in my mind as, wow, the Knicks could really apply this to their offense to great success.
Yeah, it was high post. It was movement heavy because Sabonis is such a good passer. I'm curious to see how much he uses Karl Anthony Towns in that high post situation. I don't think he's a passer Sabonis is, but he is a good passer, like an above average passer for a big. It was also heavy on speed for De'Aaron Fox and an emphasis on getting out in transition and actually, using that not just to finish at the cup, but spray out and hit corner shooters. Like, they did a lot of fun things offensively. The defense was terrible on that one King scene that was really good. But I think that's probably more of a personnel thing than anything else. Doug, what I wanted to ask you, just moving back for a second, they fired Tibbs a month ago. Who is immediately like your top three at that point? Because we talked about it a little bit with Bondi, as you heard. I'm a little surprised that this is where we land after a month, though I still think there's a world where this is the right hire. I think from an experience standpoint, this is like a good job. But I do think it's fair for some Knicks fans to be like, wait, so they went from Tibbs to Mike Brown. Like, so is this like, what's kind of the point? Like, I kind of get that thinking, even though I'm not sure I agreed. Like, I think that's worth being talked out. But where are you at in terms of a month ago? Like, who did you envision maybe being the guy here as we sit here today?
Well, immediately my top three, when we realized that this whole scheme of prying away currently employed coaches was falling through. Look, it's a pie in the sky. Of course you want Ime Udoka. Like, why wouldn't you want to get one of the best coaches in the league just to leave their team and come and coach for you? So once we realized that this scheme was out the window, even the Jason Kidd thing, which seemed to have legs for a second, now is obviously dead. My top three were, I was immediately like, who is available? Who is actually available and ready to take on this job? Johnny Bryan, it's a tantalizing option. I hope I don't feel about Johnny Bryan how I felt about Kenny Atkinson after the Tibbs hire, like in terms of wondering what if they went in that direction. That's kind of Kenny Atkinson was the guy who, after the Knicks hired Tibbs, I was always wondering what the team would have looked like if they had hired Kenny instead. I wonder if I'll feel that way about Johnny Bryan. I don't know, and I don't know where Johnny Bryan will end up in the league after this offseason. I also had Mike Brown and Taylor Jenkins. Those were my next two choices. The experienced guys with known ability offensively and just trusted names within the business that have taken teams under pressurized situations a pretty long way. So as far as I'm concerned, there wasn't a dazzling, spectacular hire. I'm out on Mark Jackson. Van Gundy, Jeff specifically, doesn't seem particularly interested in a head coaching job at this moment. Maybe he would have been open to it, maybe not. But as far as a guy that I knew for sure would be interested in this job and would take it on just with open arms, Mike Brown, Taylor Jenkins, Johnny Bryant were my three choices. So they went with one of those three.
I liked your top three. I talked about it on a show a couple weeks ago with Sean Hardy from Knicks Film School about this, and he wasn't convinced at first of Mike Brown. I had Mike Brown. We gave our list of 5 coaches. I had Mike Brown. He also had his list of his coaches, and I tried to convince him with Mike Brown, and he kind of came around when I sold him a little bit on Mike Brown, because Mike Brown was in my top 3 to 5, I would say, for sure. So I don't think it's a bad hire for the Knicks. I understand, and we talked about this before, and Bryan just alluded to this. I understand why it's not a sexy hire or an exciting hire, but at the end of the day, who cares if you win? It really comes down to the results sometimes, as Steph alluded to, or not. And either you win or you lose. So if Mike Brown wins and it wasn't a sexy hire, nobody's going to give a damn, right? If he loses and it wasn't a sexy hire, people will give a damn about the losing, not whether the hire was sexy or not. But the roster, Bryan and I here, I think, like both of the moves the Knicks made here in terms of free agent signings, as you mentioned before, Doug, because they addressed some needs. Last in bench scoring in the NBA last year, we saw from the Knicks. Do you think this roster is fine? Is this the roster you want to see to start next season? Or do you think there should be another move or two made, which likely would be a trade? But do you think there should be some other moves made, or are you fine with this roster going into next season for Mike Brown to take control of?
Unless there's a really seismic trade opportunity, and I really only mean LeBron James and Giannis.
Doug, hold on.
Because I'm already talking crazy. You want crazy.
Hold on.
I'm talking crazy.
Hold on, Doug.
Are you pro LeBron James, Doug? Because
that's where we're going.
Jumping ahead.
We need to know. No, we just want to know. No. I said we're going to stop it right here. Bryan was on the same wavelength as me. We need to know, are you here for a LeBron James trade to the Knicks? I need to know where you stand on this, sir. Where are you?
It's a scary thought, and it's felt strangely written in the stars. Ever since 2K randomly, to troll all Knicks fans, made a game mode several years ago where it was like, what if LeBron went to the Knicks? You can play that reality out. It's always been something on my mind that I've been curious and wanting to see. But I think the truth of the matter is, if you're getting LeBron, I would say in all likelihood, you're sending out Karl Anthony Towns. And the most interesting...
Or...
Don't even say it.
Right. That's no. Not Brunson.
Okay. I thought that's where you were going.
No. Absolutely not. No. But or you would have to look at Wingstop and
right.
Like
and the problem
how does that make you better?
Right.
Right. Exactly. The problem with that
is going to be 41 in December.
Yeah, he had 41-year-old. Listen, 28-year-old LeBron James was an elite two-way player, but 41-year-old LeBron James, he takes a couple possessions. Understandably, he takes some time off on defense.
Couple quarters a game on defense
here or there.
A couple quarters is more like it, Bryan. I agree.
But to get look, however they could swing Giannis, I would say whatever it takes, you get Giannis. LeBron, it's more complicated. I wouldn't want to lose the possibility of seeing what Towns could do under Mike Brown. And from a financial standpoint, saying, okay, we can wash our hands clean of the Towns money is saying that you don't believe this build can win a championship in the first place. So it's why are we even doing this from the jump? So maybe LeBron, for right now, I would say no. my initial reaction, because again, you lose the wing defense if you give up wing stop, and you lose the potential for this build to actually stay together and stick together for a number of years if you give up Cat. Giannis, great, whatever is possible. But sorry, go ahead, Dex.
No, totally understood on Giannis. I just feel like we got to start, because you're right. It goes back to the 2K thing. People are acting like they're still in 2010. They want LeBron here. We have to do this like we talked to kids about drugs back in the day. Just say no to LeBron, man. Like, we don't have to do this. It's not going to benefit the team. It's not going to make them better. I understand LeBron's an all-time great player. It's going to – no, just you got to probably take Bronny with you too. No.
Well, we'll stick him right into the $2.2 million once he'll agree to a buyout with the Lakers, and then we can stay under the second apron and get LeBron James. That's my to be the 11th man for the Knicks.
But but basically you like the roster as it is going to next season.
I think the pieces are in place to develop more cohesion than the point that we got to last season. I think the pieces are also in place to change this starting lineup that's on the screen right now. I really believe, as Bondi alluded to, I don't think he expressed an opinion one way or the other, but he did say that it's a possibility. Well, I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but the idea of the fluidity within the starting lineup is something that I'm interested in. And where does that change happen? If you ask me, Mitchell Robinson should be starting in this group, because it just takes away so many questions about the defense and his verticality, his threat by the rim. The Knicks should be free to fire away, knowing that Mitchell Robinson will be there to clean up the glass, as he was able to do in the playoffs. So I think that's a much better. And then we talk about pace, right? We talk about, as Bryan alluded to with De'Aaron Fox, Mike Brown and pace. Okay, well, now you have a second unit. If you move Hart to the bench, that could include Deuce McBride, Jordan Clarkson, Gershon Yabusele, and Josh Hart. And that, to me, sounds like a group that could move fast, that could push the ball really quickly up the court and give the Knicks a different look. And it's funny because I think the captain himself is going to be the player that needs to make the biggest adjustments. And I think he's absolutely capable of doing it, to make the biggest adjustments, to move into a new system, to move into a new era of motion offense that involves ball movement, that involves off-ball screens, that involves high post passing from a big. This is all stuff that is going to be much different for Jalen Brunson, coming from his 3 seasons being a super isolation-heavy player for the Knicks. So in terms of personnel, I think we have the talent now all the way to our 11th guy. We have players that are solid, that are reliable, that will be dependable, and can allow the bench to rock and play and give a different look, that much more so than they were able to do this season, partly because of Thibodeau and partly because of personnel issues. And I think it's a good group. I think it's a really good group, and it takes a smart coach, but it doesn't take a Red Holtzman to figure out this group. It takes a smart, experienced basketball mind to get the most out of this group.
I'm really intrigued to see how Coach Brown could be more imaginative with this offense. Last thing before we go, Doug, we'd be wrong if we didn't ask you about this. We know that you do a fantastic job making all the recap songs after every game. I got to think you're working on a Mike Brown song. A Mike Brown song has to be dropping soon, right? Got to be coming.
I'm going to put out a Mike Brown song tomorrow.
Hey.
I'm working. I'm cooking it up. I spent all day researching and thinking about, why do I have this bizarre affinity for Mike Brown? Why do I think this is a great hire when everyone else is kind of like, I don't know, whatever. So I tried to encapsulate that into my song that I'll put out tomorrow.
Can you give us a hint on what's the song being covered?
I'm going to tell you right now. I hope this is not too disappointing. It's an original. Ooh, I feel like with off-season moves, the game recaps, they work really well with the covers, with the tributes and parodies. But when we're talking about off-season moves, bigger concepts, bigger picture stuff, I like to go original.
I love it. All right.
I like that. I like that thinking also. That's real.
Thank you.
I like that. Can't wait to see what you cook up. Everybody, that is Douglas Burns. Check him out on all social media platforms. Does a fantastic job with the Knicks recaps. And now we're going to get a Mike Brown track tomorrow. We know it's going to be dope. Doug, appreciate you rocking with us. Thank you, man.
Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it.
No problem. Anytime. Again, everybody check out Doug. I know everybody's looking forward to seeing that new track. We have gone for about an hour. We are going to wrap here, but it was fun. Any final thoughts, Bryan? Because we all know how excited you are about Mike Brown being in New York. By the way, folks, Bryan was jumping for joy earlier today. It is straight sarcasm.
I don't think
you don't dislike it. I'm messing with you. No, I know that. I know that.
I'm just like, again, we talked about it with Bondi, and I thought Bondi raised some interesting, I don't want to say criticisms because that's unfair, but like points about like, okay, he's the thinking is Mike Brown, that is, bring out the most of this roster. And Bondi was kind of like, well, are you sure? Because guys had career years under Tom Thibodeau. Guys did X under Tom Thibodeau, right? Like ultimately, we're going to find out. Like, there's a lot of people, like in the chat, for example, they're mother effing each other back and forth about you don't know this, you don't know this, or whatever. But like, we don't know.
None of us know. None of us know.
We're not gonna know how it's like. And there's not an obvious philosophical difference here in terms of like this isn't like going. This is just a name, but this isn't like going from Tibbs to Mike D'Antoni, where you know immediately, oh, I know what this team is going to look like, more or less. With Mike Brown, it's like you don't know. And that's by the way, that's not a bad thing because the whole point is to be more adaptable than your previous coach. We'll have to see how he handles that. And also, I think Knicks fans, and I had this question too, about like, all right, how is he going to tinker with the chemistry? Because the chemistry wasn't always like an easy flowing, easygoing offense last year. You know what I mean? You had guys like occupying the same space on the floor. You didn't have a lot of movement. You had heavy isolation. And okay, you saying you want to play a more free flowing style is cool, but like that's not naturally what Jalen Brunson does. So you're gonna have to get him to excel at that. That's not naturally what everyone on this team does. So like you could incorporate that into your system. Maybe we'll see, or maybe it's just isolation heavy again. So there are a lot of things that we just don't really know yet, and maybe he'll speak to them at his opening press conference.
Maybe, but I think I love the word you used there, right? Adaptable, because that's if you're the Knicks when you made this change from Tom Thibodeau, this is literally what you need to happen. You need that adaptability for this to be a success. Yes, the results are going to matter, but you have to have that adaptability. And you bring up good points, Bryan. Like we don't know how it's going to work, and I'm glad you and I are brave enough and mature enough to say we ain't got all the answers. We don't know everything and how it's going to play out. I think the people that are saying that are lying. They're straight lying to you. If you say this is how this is going, you have no idea. You don't know. And listen, you can say that about any coach that you hire. It is a chance. You're banking on things you saw in an interview. It's just like interviewing anybody. And you interview for anybody, somebody's taking a chance on you. I don't care how dope you think you are. Somebody's taking a chance on you, your potential, and how they think you could fit into said company. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. We've all been around and seen it too. You've seen coworkers come along where it's like, oh, that didn't work. We've seen these things before. So or bosses too, right? So we've seen it before. Time will tell. I find it fascinating. And that's why I asked Steph that one question where I was like, hey, who is Mike Brown? Is he the offensive guy that we saw in Sacramento? Was he the defensive guy we saw early in his career? Is he now at a point where all this stuff comes together? I don't know. I think if all of it comes together, that's dope. But I have no idea. You have no idea. We're being honest about it. But I think you're right. The word you use, and we'll close on this, adaptability. The word Bryan just used there to me is so spot on, because if he is adaptable to the personnel, and whether that means, and then hopefully the personnel, also players, you hope they're adaptable to him. You kind of hope some of that too. Maybe Jalen Brunson is. Maybe he does play in a more heliocentric offense, right? Maybe it is too ISO heavy. I don't know how it's going to look. Maybe he'll play to his strengths. Maybe it'll be a mix. I think it'll probably be more likely some of that, bit of both.
Maybe.
But we'll see. Time will tell. I'll tell you what, if they go 30-10, praise Bryan. He didn't predict it, but just praise him anyway. If they go 4-10, like Steph said, either way, Knicks fans out there is going to be very interesting at the start of the season. I'm excited. I think the Knicks have had a good offseason. I think they made 2 good signings off the bench. I have no problem with this coaching hire. I think it's fine. I understand it's not sexy, but I think it's fine. And We'll see.
Yeah,
We'll see.
we'll see what happens with the rookies that they got, and summer league. A lot of people will be paying attention because that's
Oh, I
coming
will
up in a
be.
few days.
Yeah.
So like, there's going to be a lot of potential there. Another thing, the last thing on Mike Brown, like he's 55, and I think people think he's. I mean, he has been around for a long time. I think people think he's at like tail end, and it's like no, he's done a lot of learning over the course of his career. Like he didn't coach the Kings the same way he coached the Cavs, the same
Good
way he
point.
coached the Lakers early on. And when he coached the Lakers, that was just it just did not work
He
out
came
at
into a
all.
mess. Right. He came
You know
into a
what
mess.
I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
just he came into a mess of Sacramento, and look at what happened. And granted, they had more talent at that point, but and then it became a mess again, and he got fired. So like he's done a lot of learning. He became a head coach in his 30s, and we'll see. Tibbs comparatively is who he has been throughout the course of his career. We can't really say that about Mike Brown. So for
We've
better or
seen
worse, he's the
ability.
coach, and yeah, and we won't know. Again, they're the betting favorites to win the East. So like that's the standard. We'll see.
It is a standard to live up to. Finals or bust. Don't know what happens if it's a bust, but it's finals or bust. That is Bryan Fonseca. I'm Dexter Henry. We thank everybody in the chat. We saw your comments. Some of y'all were fighting in there too much. Ain't no need to do all that. It's just the off season. But we appreciate each and every one of you for checking us. If you missed this, you can watch it back. You can check it out on all digital streaming platforms as well, too. We'll have another good episode of New York Got Game coming up this weekend, where we're going to look into this coaching hire, a little bit more of a deeper dive, and the two players that the Knicks signed this week in Jordan Clarkson and Gershon Yabusele. Bryan and I, we may have some more lives coming. Who knows? Maybe through Summer League, some other stuff that comes up with the Knicks. We'll do some more New York Got Game lives. But as for everybody, enjoy your 4th of July holiday weekend. We'll let you know the next stuff coming up with New York Got Game. Stay cool. Stay safe out there. Bryan, appreciate you, brother. And we will do this again soon. Thank you, everybody.